Welcome back to This Day in Scottish History. I'm your host, Colin MacDonald. Today we set our sights on the 6th of May, 1560, a day of smoke, steel, and bitter struggle on the cobbled streets of Leith. It was here, in the heart of the Scottish Reformation, that English and Scottish Protestant forces launched a full-scale assault on the French-held port town of Leith. And if you're curious about other fascinating events that happened on this day in history, be sure to check out my blog at bagtownclans.com/thisday. The link is in the description. Now, let's set the stage. The mid 16th century in Scotland was a time of seismic upheaval, religiously, politically, and militarily. The Protestant Reformation, which had already shaken much of Europe, was now rippling through Scotland. But unlike in some countries where the Reformation spread through preaching and pamphlets, in Scotland it came with cannon fire and clashing steel. At the centre of this storm stood Mary of Guise, a French noblewoman and the mother of Mary, Queen of Scots. As Queen Regent of Scotland, Mary of Guise represented the interests of Catholic France, the long-standing ally of Catholic Scotland. But times were changing. A growing number of Scots, including powerful nobles like the Lords of the Congregation, had embraced Protestantism and were determined to break French influence over their land. The port of Leith, just north of Edinburgh, became the flashpoint. Fortified by French troops and serving as their principal base of operations, Leith was a thorn in the side of the Protestant cause. It was from here that Mary of Guise exerted her authority, and it was here that Protestant hopes of reform could either take root or be crushed. Enter the English. Sensing both an opportunity and a duty to support fellow Protestants, Elizabeth the Fine of England agreed to send troops north to assist the Scottish reformers. This was not an act of charity, it was cold political calculation. England could not tolerate a French military presence so close to home, and so, in the spring of 1560, English ships sailed into the Firth of Forth, and a combined Anglo-Scottish army laid siege to Leith. For weeks, they bombarded the town with artillery and dug trenches in the surrounding fields. The French defenders, however, were well prepared. They had strengthened Leith's walls, built bastions, and were supplied by sea. Skirmishes erupted daily. The siege dragged on, and then came May 6th. That morning, the Allied commanders decided it was time for an all-out assault. English and Scottish troops stormed toward Leith's walls, scaling ladders under a hail of musket fire and cannon shot. The defenders fought back fiercely. The narrow streets became killing grounds. Reports from the time speak of soldiers being thrown from the parapets, of desperate hand-to-hand combat, and of bodies piled high in the ditches. But despite their determination, the attackers failed. The French held their ground. The assault was a disaster for the Anglo-Scottish forces. Casualties were heavy, morale was shaken, and the defenders remained firmly in control. The dead lay strewn before the walls of Leith, and the siege, for the time being, settled back into a grim stalemate. Yet, the story doesn't end there. Though the French had won the day, they couldn't hold out forever. Political winds were shifting. Mary of Guise was gravely ill and would die just a month later. And back in France, the young King Francis II, husband of Mary, Queen of Scots, was struggling to maintain control amid growing unrest at home. France's appetite for a prolonged Scottish campaign was dwindling. By July of that year, the Treaty of Edinburgh was signed. The French agreed to withdraw from Scotland, effectively ending their military presence and paving the way for the Protestant Reformation to take hold. The blood spilled at Leith was not in vain, though the May 6th assault had failed, the broader cause had triumphed. The Siege of Leith is a stark reminder that history is not only shaped by victory, but by resilience. The men who died on that May morning helped forge a new chapter in Scottish history, one of reform, resistance, and the long road to self determination. Thank you for joining me today on this day in Scottish history. I hope this tale of siege and sacrifice has brought a moment from our past vividly to life. Don't forget to visit my blog at bagtownclans.com/thisday for more stories from Scotland's rich and turbulent history. I'm Colin MacDonald. Haste you back.